Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ballpit. It's Aaron here with another album review, this time of the album Dead Boy by dedboii Kez. And I get it. I'm late again. At this point, you just have to understand that, it takes me 3 to 5 business months to get around to things. So, if you've been around for a little while, you know that, honestly, me getting around to it only 2 months or whatever after the release of the album is insane. I'm way ahead of schedule right now. But besides that, just getting more into the album, I'm gonna go over some of my opening thoughts before I get into a more detailed description of the album. So just to start, the title of Dead Boy plus the cover art of Kez's face with you can tell that it's very direct and intentional to have the face tattoos of the little crescent moon right under the eye, as well as the Dead Boy tat. It definitely, symbolizes and goes to show kind of what this album is going to be about. As you learn throughout the album, Dead Boy is more than just the beginning of Kez's artist name. It's also the name of the group that Kez was at one time a part of. So that plus the kind of the crescent moon, it definitely, in my opinion, symbolizes, not even symbolizes, that's not the right term, but it basically, it hints at what the album is going to be about, which is the loss of their friends, which is something that Kez has spoken about before in some of their songs. And I think that this album is definitely a more personal reflection of what that has meant, means, and will mean in the life of Kez. And so, a couple things before we get a little more into it. Obviously, like, comment, subscribe on the channel, and go check out Kez's music because, I wouldn't have an album to review without an album to review, if that makes sense. So obviously go check out the original work out on all platforms, Dead Boy. And without further ado, Aaron, if you want to take over from the lab with a more in-depth analysis on a song-by-song basis. All right, thank you, Aaron. Now, here in the lab, we start off with the very first song of the album, which is just titled Dead Boy, same title as the actual album. And before the song even really begins, there's kind of it's like a little sniff and an all right before the actual production kicks in and the lyrics start. And to me, it makes it seem like Kez was crying before the song started. And honestly, even just right off the bat, just from that start and the song as a whole, it immediately sets a very different tone for this album, even compared to other Kez projects like Heart Melt Summer and I See Dead People that are more emotionally in tune with sad or negative emotions than they are with anger or more kind of intense emotions. Not to say that sadness isn't intense. You guys get what I'm saying. Like, happen in Dead Life 2 or something of the sort like that. Or I Choose Violence. So even compared to the other more sadder projects, it's still very different. At one point, Kez references every morning crying about faces that they just can't remember because it happened so long ago.
I cry every morning over faces I can't remember anymore.
You can kind of infer from that Kez was young when that happened. I think they mentioned being 12 when their first friend passed away. And so while the details of such may be a bit blurry, like exactly what their faces look like, the impact of living through such an event is still very real. And my favorite kind of lyric set from this is this right here.
And your last words were lies saying I'm alright while you bled on the floor.
It's just so intense and powerful of a statement that it really kind of, that's really the moment where you go, this is going to be a different sort of album than we're used to. And then it transitions into What It Takes, which is a super kind of, it's honestly like a pretty, like the intro beat comes in kind of bouncy. It feels very elevator music-esque to me. And I don't mean that in a bad way. In like a good kind of like funky, jazzy, sort of light, bouncy elevator music style. And then in the very first line, Kez references how all their friends are in heaven, but hell is their destination.
All my homies went to heaven. If I die, don't send to hell.
And to me, this song is very tongue-in-cheek and sort of self-reflective, as Kez kind of just looks back on everything at a certain point and looks at, again, very tongue-in-cheek, very analytical. The third song that is right after that is called Audible Teardrops. This beat is a lot more intense, and when it opens in, it actually kind of scared me a little upon first listen. And then I just put on my little notes, that's what I'm looking at down here, that Kez starts going a little crazy about 35 seconds in, which is at this part right here.
Don't make me come through with all my brothers, but that's overkill. I know people who ain't holding 40s, but got false jumps.
And then at the end, the voice switch, where it gets a lot deeper, and more kind of like from like the diaphragm than anything else. It very much plays into the name of the song being Audible Teardrops, in the sense that the voice and the lyrics that are being said are the verbal extension of crying, in a sense. I don't want to go too much into detail on everything in these songs, especially on this one. So just go listen, but the tone and the lyrics of especially that voice switch at the end, very sad, and they definitely start to impact me a little bit. I feel the sadness personally kind of weighing in on my shoulders and chest. The fourth song, which might be my favorite on the project, is called 12 Dead Names. The line in there where he says,
I still breathe, and all of my friends don't.
that's an incredibly powerful line. And there's a line in here that I can actually relate to very, very strongly, which is,
They thought we were criminals, but we were only sophomores.
I just, from my own personal life, I can understand that line. It definitely personally feels impactful to me. And like the tonal change is, this is like the point in the album where the emotional weight of such really starts to impact me. I start feeling the emotions that Kez is injecting into every song, every line, every beat a lot more. Right after that is War-Torn Child, which is honestly a very descriptive and meaningful title. The description of being a war-torn child in of itself is super heartbreaking. And when you hear Kez start to talk about their life back then, it feels incredibly valid. And I feel like even just the title of the song itself helps you understand where Kez is coming from a lot more. Right after that is, if it's not 12 Dead Names is my favorite, this next one, Ramirez, is my favorite. I don't know the importance of the title, but I can assume that is the name of a friend of Kez's that has since passed. And Kez kind of reveals in the song that some of Kez's songs were seemingly written by this person, and those specific songs mean a lot to Kez. Lines about wanting a second chance and you'll never get one again, and Song to Mom about fixing problems, she never made it out of hell, is incredibly powerful. And this song gets me every time. Like, when I listen to this song, I start to cry a little bit. Like, even if it's just one, like, I feel like a tear starting to like form there. It gets me every time. I've listened to this album probably like 10 or 11 times through before I sat down to write down my notes on it and listen to it again. So I probably am about 12 listens in, and I can't think of one time I was listening to this and did not shed at least a tear at Ramirez. It is the point of the album where I'm fully invested in it, and the emotions have fully weighed on me, and I'm now totally a part of the album and the emotions that are involved in it. The next song is actually a single that was released before this album was released, which is called The Kids See Ghosts. At the beginning of this one, there's also a reference to Kez probably crying, similar to Dead Boy, the very first song on this album. In the beginning, it's a very socially reflective song that talks a lot more about society, in the sense that it's like all the monsters they made essentially distract Kez from all the monsters that they should be afraid of, and talking about society creating the fears and the monsters that are within it. I love the background production, which is very like a very low key acoustic kind of beat. Obviously, this song's a reference to "Kids See Ghosts" by Kanye's "The Kids Still See Ghosts." And one of the most powerful lines is when Kez references that the kids still see ghosts, but Kez is alone, which is how he knows that everything is broken. It's incredibly powerful stuff. And then to end off this album is the last song called "Amazing Was the Life You Lived." The beginning is very echoey, and I love that part of it. A line like, "I wasn't there when you needed me, too scared to pull out the piece, and took Kez so long to realize life is amazing." And this last song is full of so many really, really impactful lines that really just sit and make you think and reflect on the emotions that have been placed in front of you by Kez up to this point. And that is kind of my personal lab breakdown of every single song, and I'll transition to Aaron for the closing thoughts that sum up the entire album and sum up its more of its social place, or its discographical. That's now a word, I guess. Place in Kez's discography. So I'm just gonna just go to Aaron. I'm transitioning to Aaron. Go. Thank you, Aaron. It seems like you're struggling a bit there at the end. But some closing thoughts on this album. Kez once again shows that they have so much more versatility in their music ability than they often get credit for. But anyways, Kez shows there's a lot of versatility in their music ability through the different projects showing off different abilities. And the fact that there's not really like a genre or a subgenre of hip-hop or adjacent that Kez can't dip their toes into and create good art from it. And specifically with this album, the ability to make art, to make music, but to make art in general, that makes people feel things so deeply, to me, is one of the greatest gifts that a creator can have. And so whenever you're making art or music, in this specific case, that you make as sadder music that is so powerful in its emotional palpability that it can bring people like myself to tears, that has to be one of the highest honors that you can receive as a creator, because ultimately, as a creator, especially making stuff like Kez does, your ultimate point, what you're trying to do is to make art that reflects emotions that you feel. And so to make somebody feel the emotions you feel just by listening to your art shows that you have incredible talent and ability, and that the art you make is meaningful and impactful. And that is ultimately probably the highest honor you can be given or bestowed as a creator. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Shout out Kez for making a great album as usual. Looking forward to what happens next. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe.